Usually here at IFFP, we have two readings, and we try, it doesn't always work out, to have one from the New Testament and one from the Hebrew Bible. So today's readings were only half that. The only scripture was from the New Testament. What? That was Maccabees. Yes, that was from the book of Maccabees. And that is not a part of the Hebrew Bible. It's not part of the Jewish canon. Right, that's an interesting factoid. But why am I talking about it, Well, I'm talking about it because that story is interesting. The early Christian canon preserved the books of Maccabees at a moment when Rabbinic Judaism ultimately did not include them in the Tanakh, into our Torah, the official Hebrew Bible. In this way, the Christian scriptural world inadvertently became the guardian of a profoundly Jewish story. By embracing Maccabees 1 and 2 as part of the wider biblical library, Christian communities ensured that the memory of the Hasmonean revolt, the struggle for religious freedom, and the origins of Chanukah remained accessible for centuries. These books contain some of the most detailed historical accounts of Jewish resistance under Greek oppression, the defense of the Torah, the willingness to sacrifice life rather than abandon faith. Had they not been maintained by a Christian canon, it may have survived only in scattered historical references instead of a continuous narrative text. This preservation has had lasting effects. From a Christian perspective, the Maccabean story shaped our understandings of martyrdom, influencing how early Christians interpreted courage, suffering, and fidelity to God. At the same time, it kept alive a uniquely Jewish narrative, the assertion of Jewish identity, worship, and self-governance against forced assimilation. For Jewish readers today, especially in interfaith families, there's a certain irony and a certain gift in knowing that one of Judaism's most well-known stories was safeguarded not by Jewish canon, but through the literary decisions of another faith. Ultimately, the inclusion of Maccabees in the Christian biblical canons ensured that the narrative of Chanukah, the Hasmoneans, and the Jewish fight for spiritual autonomy remained part of the Western religious imagination. It offered a bridge between communities and ensured that this chapter of Jewish history, rich with courage and complexity, was never lost to time. But, as we just heard and saw in our readings, the book of Maccabees do not mention the miracle of the oil. The miracle of the oil, where a small amount of oil burned for 8 days, is a story that appears in later rabbinic literature, specifically in the Babylonian Talmud, which we also just read. This was compiled, by the way, the Talmud, centuries after the events described in the books of Maccabees. The Maccabee accounts focus on military victory and the rededication of the temple itself. So what do we make of this? A lot. The Maccabees became the Hasmonean dynasty that ruled Israel from 140 BCE to 63 CE during Roman times. So they were the leaders that Jesus railed against, the ones that permitted gambling in the temple, the ones that persecuted the poor. As a rabbi, Jesus was part of the opposition, the group dedicated to preserving Judaism through prayer, tradition, ritual, and molded what we know of modern Judaism. So why keep that story at all? And it's a good question. And it's actually fairly obvious, and it's instinctive. Who does not need a party focused on light and community in this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere? The practicality and human need for this spurred the rabbis to honor the rededication of the temple, which apparently did happen on the 25th of Kislev, a date that falls between the end of November through the end of December. But they weren't going to elevate the conflict and eventual success of the clan that became their enemies. Instead, they inferred a miracle from God, a miracle about a scant resource that exceeded expectations, a miracle about light and faith and hope. So should we call them out for that? Honestly, no. No more so than any other religion creating or modifying holy days to suit human sociological and psychological needs. They all do that. And as far as I'm concerned, the end result of having this holiday of joy, community, and wonder during this time of year, when we need these reminders, it's worth the slight fudge. It is worth it to remember that the point of Chanukah is not gifts. The point of Chanukah is not gifts. It's not the history of a successful rebellion. It's not even the games and the food. The point of Chanukah is that having a little with faith can become enough. Light is a symbol of hope. Community is a gift to be treasured. And perhaps the real miracle we're supposed to notice, not the oil, not the battles, not the dynasty that rose and fell, but the way a small story preserved by the Christian tradition found its way back to Judaism and continues to illuminate our lives. It reminds us that wisdom can be carried across boundaries, that memory can be tended by unexpected hands, and that sacred stories have a way of surviving when people need them the most. In a season defined by darkness and searching, Chanukah calls us to kindle light wherever we find it, in our homes, in our families, in our interfaith community, and in the shared values that transcend culture and doctrine. It teaches us that courage can begin with a single spark, that hope can outlast scarcity, and that joy can be chosen, even insisted upon, when the nights are long. So as we enter this season together, may we honor the complexity of the past, embrace the richness of our intertwined traditions, and carry forward the simple but profound truth at the heart of this holiday, that even the smallest flame, when protected and shared, can light the way for us all.